And what's really important is that he explained the comet trajectories. So before Newton, people would see a comet going by, and then a day later they'd see another comet going by, they'd be like, oh, that's two different comets. Newton was like, no, what's happening is that these comets are coming and getting slingshotted around by the sun going back the same way. Because their trajectories are parabolic. So that's what we were saying is two comets is actually one. So interestingly enough, this is the argument that actually convinced a lot of people against the fluid vortices, like that there's no, the other thing doesn't work. Just because this is only possible if it's force at a distance rather than other. So I think that's interesting. All right, so what is the overall effect of the Principia? The first is that it proves, pretty picture. This is Newton's personal copy of the first edition of the Principia. Like you can see, he has notes and stuff of things he wants to change. So that's like his actual handwriting. Isn't that so cool? Okay, sorry. All right, so one of the things that it said that Newton emphasized was that laws are universal. That the same gravity that affects falling objects on Earth is keeping the planets in motion around the sun. And this was just something that this was a huge breakthrough to make. Just because, intuitively, if you think about it, we're ingrained to think that gravity is affecting both of these two spheres. But if you had grown up without making that connection, intuitively, why would the motions of the heavens have anything to do with things on Earth, This is a big breakthrough. He also emphasized the scientific method, which is kind of interesting considering his interest in alchemy, but, whatever. Yeah, so, once again, Newton uses a lot of Hooke's ideas. Like, when he was in seclusion, he and Hooke exchanged a lot of letters discussing the inverse square law and how exactly it can work. And Hooke gave him a lot of ideas, and which Newton used and didn't give him enough credit for. And Hooke is kind of like, hey, you guys, and this is my idea. And so Newton was so upset that he erased Hooke's name from all further publications of the Principia. Good job. Yeah, so also on the continental Europe is a little more skeptical than England about, their favorite sun. They actually don't really accept this view until like the late 1730s. So they just use it. They use it as a mathematical model, which I think is kind of cool because go back, rewind 200 years to Copernicus. He comes up with this geocentric theory that totally cleans up the math of everything, or this heliocentric theory that totally cleans up the math, but everyone's like, well, we can't actually say this, but it makes a lot more sense. So we'll just use it as a mathematical model. And so, 200 years later, they're doing the exact same thing. But they were forced, they did eventually accept it as the right way. Yeah, so that is the Principia. Afterwards, so that. All right, so calculus and optics were achieved by the age of 30, and the Principia was published before Newton turned 45. And after this, he still stays involved in the scientific community, but he doesn't, he's not, as active. Like he's made his big contributions. He continues to work in alchemy and theology, and he also becomes a public figure. He was a member of Parliament during the Glorious Revolution, but not an active one. His only recorded comment is a note that it was too cold and they should shut the window. That's the only thing he said during his Parliament days. So he was also he was made warden and then master of the Royal Mint in the very end of the 17th century, and he was knighted by Queen Anne. Interestingly enough, everyone says that, Newton was knighted because of his scientific achievements. No. Newton was knighted by the Queen because he was of a certain political party, and she wanted that party to win, and she thought it would be good press. Isn't that depressing? I find it depressing.
Why'd she pick Newton, though? Just because he liked the party?
No, because I think she had an excuse.
Oh.
You know, like, oh, people like Newton. Yeah, you know. He's a political. But anyway, he was also made, he was president of the Royal Society, and to be perfectly fair to him, he was a very good guy. He was a very good president. You know, like, he really advanced the popularity of natural philosophy and blah, 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 blah. But he was also a total scumbag. Because, so Hooke dies while he is president, and so he finally publishes his work on optics that he had been saving, because now that Hooke's dead, he doesn't have to give him any credit. And also, so when he was president, the Royal Society moved from, they had the smaller location, they moved somewhere like bigger and better and stuff. So the Royal Society has, they have portraits of all their members. And so when they were moving, they took off all the portraits and moved them over to the new place and hung them all back up. And every single portrait, except for one, made the move. Robert Hooke's portrait was mysteriously lost in the transition. And to this day, we have no idea what he looks like.
So much.
Yeah, like seriously, like, I'm not kidding. Newton erased this guy from history. He hated him. Oh man, it was awful. Like, we didn't actually know how smart he was until like the last 30 years. And I mean, it takes a lot of effort to do that much, sabotage. Okay, so up to now I've been giving kind of a nasty view of Newton. So I'm just going to end the presentation with an up note. I mean, he was extraordinarily dedicated to the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of natural philosophy. And he has this quote, like he said this, or he wrote this to somebody in a letter when near his death, and it's very poignant, and I like it. So Newton says, "I do not know how I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, and diverting myself and now and then finding a smoother pebble or prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." Which is I think that's definitely how Newton saw himself, just, as a searcher of truth. So Newton dies in 1727. He was buried in Westminster Abbey. Here's a picture of his grave, which is very fancy. Okay, so Newton's legacy. Newton turned the works of Copernicus, Kepler, and Galileo into a system of the world, basically encompassed by gravity and this explanation of how the solar system worked. He's also the foundation of science and philosophy until the 20th century. Like in science, again, he's the foundation of astronomy and physics. And in philosophy, his view of objects as like just these little things, and like Hucke's where we can like if you have two particles and their position at any one point in time, you can know their positions at any other place in time and space, like ever. And people, this had a big effect. Like it basically was determinism, like that everything is kind of laid out before us. And this was a big part of philosophy until the 20th century. So, cool quote by Alexander Pope. "Nature and nature's laws lay hid in night. God said, 'Let Newton be,' and all was light." That's the end. Are there any questions? Yes, Peter?
You were talking about the Principia, and you said that the inverse square law had been proposed before. Can you, tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what exactly was new in the Principia and what was separated?
Oh, okay. So basically what happened is that during that time, everyone was like, okay, well, if gravity, decreases proportion of the inverse square of the radius